Hello, my name is Amir, and I'm here today with Alex, Angela, and Roxana. We are here as a request to Delta Co. and their upcoming expansion strategy into Egypt. We will be delivering an in depth cultural analysis related to the expansion opportunity in Egypt. So, before we dive right in, here's a quick snapshot of what we will be covering today. I will first give a quick introduction of Delta Co. and their strategic objectives, followed by Roxana taking us to Egypt with the country analysis. Then we will have Angela walk us through some important information for both expats and managers. Finally, we will have Alex ending off with some findings of current expats in Egypt, as well as our own recommendations for a successful expansion into Egypt. So, to begin, Delta Co. is a Canadian petroleum and energy company who has amassed enormous success being a leading energy supplier in Canada. With immense growth, discussions to expand to emerging markets are now one of Delta Co.'s strategic objectives. After some thorough analysis and examinations of revenue and growth potentials of various emerging markets, Egypt has been shortlisted to open a wholly owned subsidiary of Delta Co. Egypt seems to be a promising location for Delta Co. to start off its global expansion. So that is why, as in-house consultants for Delta Co., we are here to provide guidance on how to successfully cross-culturally manage the Egyptian subsidiary of Delta Co. and what the implications are for expats and Canadian managers who will be sent there to start up the operations.
So, this is the iceberg model of the Egyptian culture, and I'll go into more detail now. First, starting off with the visible parts of the culture and then the not so visible parts of the Egyptian culture. Egypt is the country linking Northeast Africa and the Middle East. While some of Egypt's ancient traditions, which date back to thousands of years ago, are still evident today, modern Egypt has evolved especially due to influences of immigrants from other Arab nations. Egypt has a population of about 67 million people, while the official language is Arabic. What Egypt is mostly known for is the Nile River, its ancient monuments like the pyramids, deserts, their hospitality and friendliness, and so on. So, for example, when talking about the hospitality and friendliness of Egyptians, they're very big on building relationships. So, they take pride in their great sense of hospitality. They're very approachable. They go out of their way to help you. When they invite you to their home, they serve you good food. So, in general, they're just very welcoming. So, this is something that foreigners will notice right away when they visit Egypt. In order to do business in Egypt, however, it is essential to have more than a surface level understanding of the culture. Most importantly, one needs to know what are the things that set the Egyptian culture apart from the Canadian one that we're used to. When looking at the core beliefs and values of the Egyptian culture, one needs to understand that Egyptians have strong family values, so one's actions, depending on whether it's good or bad, can either bring prestige or disgrace to your family. As a result, practices such as nepotism in the workplace is encouraged as it shows that family members are looking after one another and helping them out. In Canada, however, family is not like a top priority. Therefore, nepotism is seen as something that's ineffective in the workplace. Even when greeting someone, because Egyptians are more family oriented, it's very common for someone to ask, "How is your mother or father doing?" during a conversation. Whereas in Canada, unless you really know the person well, it's not very common to ask about their family. Instead, you focus on the individual you're talking to, and likewise, family honor is not something that's that relevant either in the Canadian culture. In addition, Egyptians have highly value age and experience. Respecting your elders and authority figures is something that Egyptians learn from a very young age. Not only is this evident in the workplace, even outside the workplace, when addressing someone, they use titles followed by one's surname. If the person does not have a title, they can be addressed using Mr., Mrs., or Miss. Addressing someone by their first name is considered rude in Egypt. In Canada, however, it is common to address people using their first name. Even though this is not the case for all Canadians, in comparison to Egypt, respecting your elders and using titles is not something that's a significant aspect of the Canadian culture. Moreover, religion is huge in Egypt, with Islamic values being the most fundamental to all citizens. This is because 90% of the Egyptian population are Muslims, 8% are Christians, the remaining 2% are Jewish or of other Christian denominations. For example, Friday is a holy day of rest and service. Muslims fast during the month of Ramadan, so even those practicing other religions are encouraged to not eat or drink in public. In Canada, while Christian holidays such as Christmas and Good Friday are officially observed, in general, we're known to be very multicultural, therefore, we associate with people of all religions and culture backgrounds. Like women in Canada, Egyptian women are highly educated and can be seen working in the professional workforce. However, in comparison to the West, it's rare to see them in a lot of leadership roles because they have a specific gender role in society as the caretakers. And Egyptians strongly believe that women should be modest and conservative. So this can be seen, for example, in the way they dress because they're expected to have their arms and legs covered at all times. The standard dress for women is a long skirt and a long sleeve top. Even though Egyptians are known to stand very close to each other when talking, and in general they're very approachable and helpful, unknown men are not allowed to approach women. So if you have any questions or concerns, they should be addressed towards other men.
Now, business in Egypt is deeply imbued with the religion they follow. Religion, as mentioned before, is an integral part and way of life of many Egyptians, and it often extends into how business is done as well. Islam is the dominant religion in Egypt, and the majority of Egyptians are Sunni Muslims. As we keep this in mind, we can identify the following business principles that is directly influenced by Islam. All businesses should be done fairly, as we can see having fair contracts with transparency and honesty. An important one is the prohibition of interest in all dealings. And finally, having a sense of compassion and community in all business dealings is an important part of doing business in Egypt. With that being said, business to Egyptians is all about relationships, especially when it boils down to how business is conducted. Personal relationships are key to how successful meetings will be. The first meeting can seem very formal to Canadians, but these formalities should be paid attention as they are essential in the early relationship building process. Likewise, you can observe the majority of meetings will involve coffee, cakes, but lots of small talk during even shorter meetings. What to talk about during these meetings can be about inquiring what the Egyptian history is during the ancient and modern times, as well as the local sports such as tournaments that are occurring during the time period. Another important thing to take note is that time is quite elastic, and the start and finish times will not reflect the duration of the actual meeting. It is also important to note to be aware to not arrange meetings on Fridays, as it is a holy day and a day of rest, as well as check when Ramadan is, as it is their period of fasting and business hours may differ.
Now moving on to dynamics, opportunities, and challenges. In summary, Canadians working with Egyptians should know that Egyptian manager leadership styles are usually autocratic. The manager's role is to act as an expert, and there's an emphasis on relationship over task due to Egypt being collectivist. Decision making is expected to be slow, and there is an emphasis on relationship over task. So by applying Hofstede's dimensions to Egyptian culture, we know that Egypt has a high power distance. It is very collectivist, leans more towards quality of life, and it has a high uncertainty avoidance. In contrast, Canadian culture has a very low power distance, it's very individualistic, leans more towards career success, and has medium uncertainty avoidance. All of these aspects are important in how they influence how each culture conducts business and manages their workforce. So for instance, a high power distance in Egypt contributes to a high organizational hierarchy with authoritarian leadership. A highly collectivist society means that relationships and family connections are vital in business and loyalty is highly valued. As Egypt is oriented towards quality of life, managers strive for consensus and an Islamic influence calls for compassion and mercy towards others. A high uncertainty avoidance leads to consensus decision making as well as management avoiding taking unnecessary risks. The Egyptian manager is unlike the Canadian manager in many ways. The first is that they are to act as an expert. The Egyptian manager is expected to give precise answers to subordinate questions in order to maintain their credibility and legitimacy. In Egyptian culture, subordinates' creative thinking has been limited since early education and childhood, and this is a norm as mentioned by both of our interviewed Egyptian experts. Given this, there can be challenges in that an Egyptian employee with a Canadian manager who does not give away answers believing it discourages initiative, creativity, and productivity could assume the Canadian manager is incompetent. In contrast, a Canadian employee with an Egyptian manager could assume their boss is egotistical. Egyptian and Canadian managers also differ that, in general, Egyptian managers follow a Theory X style of management. Due to their high uncertainty avoidance, managers distrust that their employees can complete successful work without careful supervision and control. On the other hand, Canadians could find this stifling. Many Canadians believe that giving their employees free rein and trust will lead to higher productivity, and it's generally thought that tighter control restricts an individual's creative thinking. Another difference between the two cultures is that Canadians value tasks while Egyptians value relationships. We can use the polarity management model to see the advantages and disadvantages both bring. There is more potential for conflict than synergy when the two cultures interact due to how differently each believe what a thriving workplace looks like. Canadians are task-oriented, they are time-sensitive, goal-oriented, and understand it's often necessary to bypass the formal hierarchy to get things done sufficiently. But this isn't the case in Egypt, where relationships are more emphasized and to cross the hierarchy is considered unnatural. Yet both sides, tasks and relationships, have both pros and cons, and Delta as a company will need to figure out how to take advantage of these two and leverage the positive values for a successful, thriving workplace, which we will discuss further in the recommendations. Here is an example of what an Egyptian organizational chart could look like from the outside. Notice the tall organizational structure, the many roles, yet subordinates only answering to one boss, highlighting the high uncertainty avoidance, and one leader presiding over the entire firm. However, in Egypt, there's more than what meets the eye. To an Egyptian working within the company, they may see a very different picture. In Egypt, the informal sector is extremely large and stable employment can be scarce. Therefore, it's important for Egyptians to help out their family or other relations as a means of favor. So while these people who may be cleaning staff and security guards who do not hold stable job security, they are still considered a member of the organization in a collectivist culture. It's important for Canadians to know this and remind themselves that you must treat everyone you encounter with respect. The person who picks you up from the hotel, your tour guide, the receptionist, all of these people, there is a very good chance that they can be close with the employees or management of the organization, and they will judge your character based on how you act outside of meetings. It is again emphasized that in Egypt there is a need, more than a want, for formality in organization. It's embedded in behaviors and physical artifacts. So for example, the behaviors are all indicative of a high power distance, deference to the manager, addressing high-ranking people with their formal titles, and high uncertainty avoidance in that subordinates consistently and constantly communicate with their boss and ask for permission. Physical artifacts that also represent these two Hofstede dimensions are written policies and procedures, presence of executive exclusive facilities such as parking, and detailed manuals, and so on. Lastly, it is a reminder that Egyptians are very risk-averse and have high uncertainty avoidance. This means that the decision-making process is extremely slow compared to Canadians who must accept this and not lose face when frustrated. Canadians should know that the first step problem-solving is to expect the influence of fatalism and Egyptians' tendency to accept situations as they are. Egyptians dislike speculation and risk and prefer quantitative facts over ideas and emotions in their information search. Thirdly, the construction of alternatives means that people will likely pick past or present-oriented solutions. The choice is only held to a select few in upper management, but many people are involved in discussing the final choice to reach a consensus. The implementation will be entrusted to a few trusted employees and will still take a long time to implement. Now we will be talking about expat life and recommendations.
Now I will give a general idea on what life can be like as an expat in Egypt. Expats may find the nature of their surrounding to be much different from what they're used to. Since 2011, there have been periodic violence and protests in Egypt, which is why expats should stay alert, as protests are often made aware for the public to know days in advance. Expats will often be given requests or even demands for money as tipping. Also, bartering is a part of Egyptian culture. The initial asking price for goods will normally start at around double its value. It can be tiresome to try and lower the price to its proper value, which is why when shopping, expats should walk around to see how much different vendors are selling the same product for to get a better sense of who is trying to financially cheat them. While nursing shortages and poor hygiene can be found in some hospitals, public healthcare standards in Egypt are lower than most in Western countries. Expats should consider taking out travel and medical insurance and using private hospitals if needed. Driving in Egypt can be extremely dangerous. There are taxis, trains, and bus services, although their safety and comfort levels will vary. It is a good idea to take the Cairo Metro in order to avoid the rush hour gridlock in the capital. Moving on, now I will give a couple pointers on how the business and its employees can succeed in Egypt. Egyptians place a large amount of value on building personal relationships with business partners, and their negotiation skills tend to extend business dealings. This reflects their emphasis on relationships. Meetings are also very likely to be interrupted by other people or phone calls. The key to succeeding in these situations is to exercise patience and to not pressure Egyptians by rushing the business deal. Business greetings are typically a little different compared to in North America due to their religion and conservative nature. When meeting the person, it is standard to start off with a handshake. Men should be greeting women with a head nod or wait for them to initiate the handshake first. It is important for a woman to dress and behave in a conservative way in order to be respected. Exchanging gifts is customary and should be of high quality and wrapped. It is important to never give anything containing alcohol or made of pigskin. So due to their high uncertainty avoidance, Egyptians may also be picky on who they conduct business with. They prefer to do business with people they know and trust. It is important to pay attention to your social cues. For example, not making eye contact when talking is perceived as being dishonest. Since Egyptians tend to do business with people they know and trust, it would be a good idea to use your business connections to facilitate introductions with others. Egyptians hold their honor and respect others have for them in high regard. It is important not to stain an Egyptian's honor, especially in the presence of others. This can be avoided by showing respect. This includes limited teasing and doing research on Islamic customs and social cues. For example, handing over your business card with your left hand is a sign of disrespect. Patience is also important for managers as well as maintaining the Canadian reputation. Canadians are normally looked at in a positive light by Egyptians, so it's important to keep that reputation. Some basic pointers to remember would be to not comment on the political situation in the Middle East, and it is equally as important to not make any comments on Islam. Since it is important for Egyptians to have a high quality of life, managers can try to be flexible enough for their employees to have a work-life balance. This can be done by allowing your employees to take their work home or to work off-site. In the next couple of slides, I will be talking about reward systems and polarity management for managers. Implementing a reward system may also be a good idea. However, managers should be careful on what kinds of rewards they are going to be offering. It is important to remember that the oil industry is very volatile, so stock options should not be one of the systems implemented. Also, it is normal for Egyptians to choose not to show up to business meetings without any advance warnings, and they may even choose not to show up to work because they are focusing on building relationships with clients outside of the office, so giving out rewards based on attendance would not be ideal either. Financial rewards may be implemented for strong performance, but giving praise and recognition to employees is also crucial because, as stated earlier, Egyptians take their honor and respect seriously. So giving them praise may act as an ego boost and help encourage them to maintain their good performance. With regards to relationship polarity management, there are a couple of warning signs to look out for that begin when employees lose motivation in the workplace. Managers should pay attention to when employees stop interacting with others, whether it be for a team building exercise or something as small as asking for help. Managers should promote team building activities and reward employees for having healthy relationships with coworkers and business partners. Doing business in Egypt revolves around building relationships, so it's crucial to use these action steps. Managers should also establish clear standards and deadlines, promote and reward employees for strong communication and performance.
To conclude, with the thorough cultural analysis and recommendations provided, Delta Co can assure a successful expansion into Egypt.